podcast hosted by Stan Gloss, co-founder and fellow at BioTeam, a life sciences IT consulting company. BioTeam is dedicated to accelerate scientific discovery by combining advanced technologies and data science strategies for scientists to get more value from their data. In this podcast series, we discuss the latest trends in data science within life sciences organizations and the technologies and strategies they are deploying to support innovation. Casey Frankenberger, Senior Vice President, Head of Data at Culmination Bio, joins Stan today. Culmination Bio has access to incredibly valuable genomics and omics datasets, the largest dataset in the world for multimodal data in healthcare. To compete, it was important for Culmination Bio to build an infrastructure that could handle visualization and analysis of these massive scale datasets. Working with BioTeam, a challenge that would typically take over a year and multiple millions of dollars was solved at a fraction of that price and in a fraction of the time. Let's listen in.
Good afternoon, Casey. I'm so excited to talk about Amazon, your first experiences with Amazon Omics. A little while ago, at the launch of Amazon Omics, we did a podcast with Aaron Friedman just to talk about what Amazon Omics was. Now this is a follow-up, getting somebody who's had their first experience with Amazon Omics to literally sit down and tell me their story. So, Casey, thank you so much for joining me. And maybe we can kick it off by having you talk a little bit about you and Culmination Bio.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Stan. Just a little bit about me. So I've been at Culmination for about 6 months now. I'm the Senior Vice President and Head of Data at Culmination. We're a very small team. Our mission at Culmination is to discover better health. My background is prior to Culmination, I was at a company called C2I that did liquid biopsy, minimum residual disease diagnostics in cancer patients, but also was building the ability to share data globally of cancer patients and outcomes. Prior to that, I was the Chief Research Informatics Officer at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago, where I met and worked with BioTeam for the first time and building an environment to house the data at Rush for research purposes. And then prior to that, I was actually one of the first employees at a company called Tempus, which is a precision medicine company that performs diagnostics in cancer patients and provides data solutions with various partners. So at Culmination, we're a subsidiary of Intermountain Healthcare. Intermountain is one of the largest healthcare systems in the United States. We work with the biorepository at Intermountain, which has millions of patient samples. And what we want to do is, as our mission states, use those patient samples to discover better health. Now, we know that there's a lot of non-trivial solutions in that space to de-identify and provide that data for discovery and to be able to handle the scale of that data. It's massive. And one of the major concerns coming into this was to think about how we would build out our infrastructure for genomic and other types of omic data. We know that that's one of the largest types of data that exist. I've seen studies that project that eventually omics will be the largest type of data. Currently, I think it's YouTube and video or astronomical data, but as time goes by and the cost of sequencing continues to go down, managing omics data will be a problem for every healthcare system, every data company, every technology company, because it'll become so integral to how we think about life.
So, Casey, who are Culmination's clients? Who would use the Culmination data sets?
Yeah, so we intend to and are actively working with various life science companies. We're working with potentially other hospital systems. And then we're also a client ourselves. So we intend to do discovery and build out technologies at Culmination, including things like diagnostics, including AI solutions, including various identifying novel drug targets and therapeutics. So really the sky is the limit when we think about this. And a lot of people that I've heard internally speaking think about it, including one of our co-founders, Lincoln Nadal, our CEO. He thinks about it as the Google of healthcare.
Right. So it sounds like a traditional pharmaceutical company is a pharmaceutical company that happens to use technology,
Mhm.
but you sound like you're a technology company that actually does science.
I love the way that you say that. Yes, I think that's a new trend. People call it tech bio. Um,
Mm.
I think that we're squarely in that place. I think that we do think about the data as the solution. We think about how do we make sure that we're generating the right kind of data that on patients, we're thinking about outcomes. We're thinking about how to identify where the problems are that are solvable, where there's unmet needs. We think about social determinants of health. We think about all kinds of things. But really, what we are excited about is that this is a new data set. It's, we believe, the largest data set in the world, or potentially the largest data set in the world around multimodal data and healthcare. And we think that just simply by running traditional, not even novel methodologies, that we'll see new discoveries. And as time goes by, we think that we'll be able to develop extremely interesting algorithms to tease out nuanced new insights from that data as well.
So you said you were only with this company about 6 months. So let's go back to 6 months and when you first rolled into Culmination, and now all of a sudden with this amazing data set. What were and early on, what were some of the challenges that you were facing when, receiving this incredibly valuable data set?
Well, so, simply how do we perform search? First, how do we even load the data responsibly and reliably? How do we work with all of the various policy, governance, cybersecurity at Intermountain to make sure that we're doing the right things as we transfer the data into our environment? How do we even estimate and manage the data, estimate the costs, manage the data? I've done similar things in previous roles at like at Rush, but there's typically a lot of vendor reviews. So you go through and you talk to multiple vendors that provide solutions. I think that takes a lot of time and is frequently, what do you want to say, you get solutions that are already available, but not necessarily exactly what you need. And so I guess one of my concerns in starting was, how do we hire enough people? How do we hire the right people? How do we know what the architectures of the solutions look like? And, that's one of the reasons why I reached out to BioTeam and to your group, and was really excited by some of the solutions that you presented, because it got us up to speed extraordinarily quickly. Within, I'd say, 2 months of contracting with you, we could actually begin exploring the data. And we're talking about something that would typically, in my previous experience, take over a year, would have cost potentially multiple millions of dollars. And we were able to do it for a fraction of that price and in a fraction of that time. And really, it allows us to then hire more responsibly. We don't have to hire quickly. We can wait for the right people. And that is one of the best things about this new company, is that, we really have a policy where we want to just have people where everybody likes to work with each other. We all respect each other, which is just such a great feeling. I mean, it doesn't always happen. And when it does happen, I think you have to appreciate it.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that you talked about, Casey, that really struck a chord with me. One, it doesn't sound like Culmination is one of those startups with multiple billions of dollars to do whatever you want, and that there was constraint around money, taking money, this kinds of things. The other part of this that I love is the fact that you kind of describe the benefit of what it's like to be an entrepreneur in the age of the clouds and other things, so that the barriers to starting up companies now have come down so low, so fast, that not having to use up all your startup capital just to build a high performance computing system, and that you can have all these resources at your fingertips from day one is really kind of what the new generation startup entrepreneur is looking at. The access to incredible power at your fingertips for really not a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few things there. Yes, absolutely. So we are, as a subsidiary of Intermountain, Intermountain is helping us get started, but we are very focused on bootstrapping. We are very focused on how we spend our money responsibly so that we can, eventually grow into that company. And I think that one of the things that you want to see as a potential future investor is, how are these people spending their money? Are they spending it responsibly? One of the other, so we have two co-founders. The other co-founder has just recently left. This is Michael Wiley. He's our COO. He's left Guardant, where they had a multi-billion-dollar exit that IPO'd as one of the premier diagnostic organizations for liquid biopsy in cancer. Michael has a background in finance. He's been an investor. He's worked at some of the top venture capital firms. He's been in the biomedical space. And so he's very mindful, very smart about how we think about strategically, what are the steps that we need to take to make sure we're on track to grow appropriately. I think that the other thing is that you just really can't beat that freedom that you have when you aren't under the thumb of $100 million or $200 million. And, everybody's tracking every movement because they want to make sure that you're ready for the next round and that you're working towards an exit. I think that we're quite proud of, how far we've gotten with our initial investments in infrastructure. I think that there's still a long way to go, but I think that, right out of the gate, I was mentioning that we're able to look at phenotypic data, clinical phenotypic data. We're able to look at genomic data. So we can even, just right out of the gate do GWAS studies across all of the various diagnoses. We can start to
Yeah.
see there's been some publications with Amgen as part of our initial attempts to work with the data. And those have been very fruitful. There have been publications in Nature and various other top publications. I think that this also allows us to just keep a small team and keep that team tight. And so it's, makes it very close. It makes it very exciting. You can, in that, be close to the clients. So when we're having all these discussions about how we would partner, that's all going to be related back to the infrastructure that we're building.
Yeah. So take us through that path that you took from the problems that you had with data into the development of the current solution using Amazon Omics, and
Sure.
and then kind of, how much data, to kind of scope this problem out
Yeah.
for us.
So initially what we did was we transferred over just as a proof of concept and to help facilitate the build. We worked with we reached out with BioTeam, and you had already put out a guideline on how to build infrastructure for multimodal data. So that looked incredibly appropriate, and all of it's Lambda driven. So you really pay for the things you're doing. You don't pay for sort of virtual servers or virtual compute that's just running in the background but not doing anything. And so we brought over, I think 200,000 patients, around around a petabyte of pathology images. And then we brought over around 100,000 subjects worth of whole genomes and genome chips. So we have genotyping on about 100,000 patients. This allows us to do, background, genetic backgrounds of those patients relative to their outcomes, responses to therapies. So the data in and of itself includes things like ICD codes, race, let's say race, gender, age, whether the patients are alive or dead. We have diagnoses. We have the lab tests that have been done on the patients and the results of those labs. We have, in addition, procedures. We have outcomes. So really all of this data is tied to biospecimens that are in the biorepository at Intermountain. And that will continue to grow. We can actually reach out to patients prospectively if we find clinical trials that may be appropriate for them. There's all kinds of interesting ways in which we can help revolutionize or help support the revolution in healthcare that's going. I think even over time we can get to complex clinical decision support. But I think initially what we're looking for is to just find some of those easy wins with the data that we have in hand. So, really the goal within the next 6 months is to have genomic data, radiological data, pathology images, outcomes, diagnoses, therapies, all, the full suite of information that a doctor would make to make decisions on patients.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the framework that we have working with you has really allowed us to put that into place. So what we did was we basically had some initial meetings with BioTeam around architecture, a workshop to essentially understand what are the use cases that we plan to have downstream. And then we want some materials that our commercial team can go out and use to put in front of potential clients so they can see the types of data that we have. And then we want to be able to analyze the data internally with internal bioinformatics or data science team members. So that is already happening. And that took, so if you just think back to the fall, I joined in, I think, September. We probably began talking to you and getting the contracting in place in October. We kicked off our initial project in November. We worked through the holidays. Thank you to some of the team members from BioTeam. And we were able to start working with the data. We were loading all of the genomics files in January, and we're able to be, by the end of January, playing with the data. And that was the initial data set. And then now we've moved on and loaded in another 1.75 million subjects worth of data. That is currently being loaded into our system. So I can see some of that and play with some of that in terms of just visualizing it and understanding how all the data connects. But that is an extraordinarily fast start to being a viable tech company and to be able to work with, again, with our commercial team and work with future clients.
So, Casey, you had lots of choices, but you could have gone with a commercial solution, but you chose Amazon Omics. What was it about Amazon Omics that won you over?
So, first of all, your team did suggest it. I've worked with a number of vendors in the past that provide platform solutions, and I've always felt that they're very restricting. One of the things that I really enjoyed with some of the previous roles that I've had is to ideate and to think of things outside of the box. And what we find with this platform is that we can customize it to our desire. We can add in new annotation files to the omics module. If we want to query based on, genes and biological aspects, we can add in ClinVar, which we did so that we can query clinical annotation to the genomics. All of these things make a difference depending on which partner and which client we're intending to work with.
So it sounds like the ability to own and kind of guide your own custom platform, the combination of what they had ready out of the box and what you wanted aligned perfectly. Did I get that right?
Yeah, and I would even phrase it as de-risking. So
Okay,
some of the things that I think of early on at a startup is how do we de-risk this scenario? And I think that one of the things that we were very conscientious of at every one of the startups that I've been at is to not get locked into something that puts a ceiling on where we can grow into. And I think that being able to manage the environment in Amazon, to have it be really completely customizable by ourselves, but then also to be able to be modular enough to have that quick start. It's this perfect. So what I would say is it was the perfect solution for us at the right time. I think over time, we'll, like anybody else, have an extraordinarily complex solution because we're going to want to serve many different solutions or many different partners. I think that at these first steps, this doesn't over-engineer. One of the blessings I've had in each of my roles that I just, went through initially was that I never have had to manage legacy infrastructure. I think that that's one of the things that's very difficult to justify if you've spent, in the past 5 years, $10 million to, as you said, to build a high performance computing environment, or to build out and really get into many details on solutions. And then you hit your first client and you have to refactor all that. Well, it costs just about as much to refactor it as it did to build it in the first place. And for us, we had a clean slate, and this gives us an extraordinarily inexpensive solution to feel out the market, to see how they want to work. Some people have solutions, they have platforms that they would like to engage with us with. Our goal is to have all of the data remain inside of our environment, and that we can allow the insights to leave. I think that's how a lot of people would prefer it. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. So this really lets us de-risk that, being locked into a commercial platform, or being or over-engineering a solution. And I think that that's one of the things that I like. And it also allows us not to have to hire a dozen bioinformaticians, data scientists, computational biologists. It is really hard, I think, for many people who aren't in technology, or aren't in computational biology and data science, to understand how many different facets there are to each of these positions. How a data scientist is different than a data engineer. How an admin or a platform engineer is different than DevOps or full stack, or and then you just get into bioinformatics and computational biology, and I mean, it just continues to just peel the onion. But every one of those people has a very valuable position in the chain of discovery and commercialization of discoveries. And I think that what the omics module does is it allows us to essentially abstract those roles. So, we have a data store that we can pull genomics from, and we can say, we want all the genomics for this patient. We want to just know what are the variants in this individual gene across a population, defined by a disease or defined by who's taking a certain therapeutic. So it really does let us just kind of slice and dice. And that also allows you to hire a different type of person. It doesn't have to be the proverbial unicorn bioinformatician. It can be some people that have potentially less experience, or maybe they have more experience in how to enhance the user experience of future clients. So sort of all of the above.
So Casey, you've done these things many different ways. If you had developed this from scratch yourself, or had gone through with commercial vendors, this solution you got up and running in a couple months. How much longer would it have taken if you had done the traditional way?
Yeah, I think it would have been 5 to 10 times as long. So I think it would have taken over a year.
To get where you got in 2 months?
I do think that, yeah, because I have just simply even integrating with a commercial package and is complex. And so, again, my experience is that I have done it when I was at Rush. We did sign some of the contracts, and I feel like I have a lot of respect for those companies. I think they're excellent solutions, but I just think that it's going to be hard to compete with what Amazon's produced with the omics module.
That's terrific. Have you shown people outside your company how far you've gotten? Have you demoed your product to people?
Yeah, well, so one of the things I haven't talked about yet is one of the, just really easy, quick solutions is to have a QuickSight dashboard. So you can pull all that data into Athena, which is sort of a master database that, is very easily accessible. You can just do SQL queries in Athena, but you can also pull that data into QuickSight, which is what I would say somewhat like Tableau, or, various other dashboarding software. And so what we've done is we've set up some easy drill downs into the data. And then when we meet with potential clients, we just kind of walk through that, allows them to see that we have the data in our hands. We're working on some things like QuickSight Q, which actually allows you to do a semantic query. So you can just type in, I'd like to see all the patients with, X, Y, and Z, and that will then show you the cohorts. That's probably going to be a few more weeks until we get a little further into that. And there are limitations to that, but I think I always say it's better to show than tell. And this allows us to show, but it also allows us not to expose any of the data to those third parties. It just lets them see sort of summary visualizations that this information is in our hands and that it's reactive. So we can drill down and we can play with it. And then it's very easy to also pull all of that data into Jupyter notebooks. So I've been playing with those actually over the past couple of weeks, and we have a few other people that have been using them inside the company, and it's quite, again, equally quite impressive how quickly you can be up and running with this framework.
That's terrific. So, last question, any advice for any young startup company that's looking to go into doing work like this from all your experience? Do you have any advice you could share for them?
Yeah, I would say don't hesitate to explore it. It actually could be, I would even encourage students and academic researchers to explore it. I think with your own credit card, the bills, I don't want to share, what our costs are currently, but you can actually do quite a bit with data that's already out there, pulling it through Amazon Omics. It doesn't actually cost a ton if you're not holding the the original like FASTQ and BAM files, but if you're just looking at VCFs, actually quite inexpensive. And I would imagine that an individual could actually do sizable research projects on Amazon Omics without incurring costs that would be detrimental to their monthly budget. I could also imagine for startups that it's going to be hard to find a more attractive solution in the genomics space. I haven't explored its flexibility with RNA-seq yet and with proteomics and various other omic modalities. We've just typically right now been stuck in DNA genomics, but I do think that the framework is set up for those types of extended solutions. I think that anybody who's interested in creating a small group, getting off the ground quickly without having to spend a lot of money, should be looking into Amazon Omics.
Listen, Casey, thank you so much. It sounds like we have a future episode to do on the expansion into those areas that you haven't gone into yet.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for your time and sharing your first experiences with Amazon Omics. I really appreciate it. And we will talk again sometime soon. Thank you,
Yeah,
Casey.
well, thank you so much, Dan, and thank you to BioTeam. It's been an incredibly good experience.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Building an infrastructure to support scientific visualization and analysis of massive datasets is an expensive and timely endeavor. BioTeam presented solutions to Culmination Bio that allowed the company to begin exploring their data within 2 months, instead of the typical timeframe of over a year, saving the company time and millions of dollars. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Visit us at bioteam.net.